You've probably heard the saying, I'm sure you have. You know who your real friends are by who shows up on moving day, right? It's funny. It's true, though. I think it really is. But I think there's a flip side to it as well. Not only do you know who your friends are, but, well, I saw it this Wednesday. I was helping a friend move. And it was incredible because the amount of people, the amount of guys who showed up to help Frederick and his family move this Wednesday was stunning, actually. And it said something to me. It said not only were these guys really kind to Frederick, but it said something, I think, about his value on those friendships. It was saying something about how he valued these guys so much that it's really easy to say yes on moving day when you've loved other people really well, when you've cultivated that kind of friendship. Welcome to Summit Drive Church. If you're new or a guest, my name is Dave. I'm the lead pastor here. And this morning, we're continuing our series called Home, Our Place in God's Family. And today, we're going to see really just how Jesus himself does community. We're just going to look at his life. We're going to look at some of his teaching too. We're going to look at his life and say, what did Jesus do when it came to community, friendship, all of the above. And just so you know as well, our stated purpose at Summit Drive Church is that we want to glorify God by developing caring, passionate followers of Jesus Christ. It's like our mission statement or whatever you want to call it. I think the best way to think of this process of following Jesus, or discipleship we sometimes call it, is just by grabbing the idea of an apprentice. What is an apprentice after all? An apprentice is somebody who is learning from a master, right? Like an electrical apprentice is somebody who walks alongside of someone who's got the red seal, I think that's what it's called, right? Someone who's done the work, and they know what they're doing, and they learn how to safely wire a home. Or I think of a postgraduate student learning from their doctoral supervisor. Basically, they're not just learning information. As an apprentice, you're learning a disposition toward life, toward the big questions. So how do you ask and answer these big questions? How do you navigate things? So you're side by side with the master builder. And you're watching how they do it. You're trying to imitate them so that you can do the things that they do. And if you are a follower of Jesus here this morning, you are an apprentice to Jesus. You are somebody who looks at his life, follows in his steps, is trying to learn how to embody the same patterns of life, the same dispositions, the same values, and to become like him, to be able to do what he does. Learning to value what he values, to do the things he does, to become, by God's grace, just like Jesus. We looked at that last week. And we're going to pay attention even more to just how does Jesus do community? Now, Dr. Robin Dunbar of Oxford University has done some research on just the significance of our relationships and how we relate to different group sizes. These are sometimes called Dunbar's numbers. And I'm just ripping all of this from a short video by the Practicing the Way video. And the biggest group Dunbar talks about is the tribe. This is the people that we kind of relate to or identify with, the group we quote-unquote belong to, gives us a vision of life, a sense of our values, a call to live with meaning and purpose. And this is a group that's bigger than 150. You don't know everybody in this group, and you might say that this is the church universal for Christian people. Then there's your village. This is around 150 people. And sociologists, they tell us that you can actually only know about 150 people, actually. I know you have 1,000 friends on Facebook, okay? You actually know how many of them. Maybe 150, says Dunbar's numbers. Then the next group down he calls your friends. This is a group of about 15. This is about 15 people, and these are the people you do life with, that you, if you're sick, they drop off groceries. These are the people who show up on moving day. These are the people that you go on vacations together with and share in life. And we talked a bit about that, our life groups are aimed at being sort of that friendship, do life side by side, life on life with each other. But then the closest circle that Dunbar talks about, he calls your intimates. This is like 1 to 5 people max. They're the ones who know who you really are. These are the people who are, they know your light and they know your shadows. They know the parts of you that are beautiful and great, and they know how you act when you're under pressure and everything's going badly. Choose my words carefully here. They're the ones who know who you are. But the thing is, Dunbar points out that very few people, or fewer and fewer people in the Western world have any intimates at all. He points to the breakdown of family and to the rabid individualism of Western culture. But Jesus, we say, he places himself in community on all of these levels. If we're apprentices to Jesus, so for the larger church, Acts 2, the disciples, Acts 1, this is the group of 120. The disciples and Mary and Martha as the 12, that's his friends. And then Peter, James, and John, the most intimate, that he calls these people to be really near to him. Jesus has friendships on all these levels. And if you're an apprentice to Jesus, we want to value that too. We want to pursue those things as well. Because in terms of our apprenticeship to Jesus, and I want to focus in on that most intimate level this morning as we talk about community. As apprentices to Jesus, you will become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. You'll become like those whom you give your attention and time to. We talked about this last week. We are not buffered selves who can kind of keep out everything and only let in what we want to. No, we are porous selves. We become like the environment we put ourselves in. We become like the people we put ourselves around. So we want to think carefully, biblically, and Jesus-y about that this morning. So if you have your Bibles, I'm going to invite you to open to John chapter 15, where Jesus talks about friendship. We're jumping into a conversation that Jesus is having with his closest group. Actually, Judas has already left this group. It's the 11. There may be some others around, not totally sure. But this is his closest followers. And this is hours before he's arrested and crucified. It's the importance of what he's saying here couldn't be overstated or more in focus. And Jesus is filling them in on the beautiful mysteries of what God is doing and their role in it. And so through this text, we're actually hearing what our role in it is as well, in what Jesus is up to. So just listen to how central friendship is. I'm going to start reading at verse 12 of chapter 15. Jesus says this, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You didn't choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command. Love each other." We're going to focus in this morning on what Jesus is saying about friendship here. Friendship with him and friendship with each other. And we can maybe say it like this. We are, and we'll see from this text, we are friends of Jesus, we are friends like Jesus, and we are friends for Jesus. Of, like, and for. Let's start with the first one. We are friends of Jesus. Before we go any farther, just look at how Jesus makes us into his friends. How does that work? Well, when Jesus talks about being our master and us his servant, that continues to be true. He's our master because we've been reading through John's gospel, a linear reading of the text. It says right off the bat that Jesus is none other than God with flesh on. He is God in person. When you hear Jesus' voice, you are hearing the voice of God. When you see Jesus' face, you are looking at the face of God. He is always and forever our master and we his servants. But he wants to thicken this up and say, that's not the only relationship that I have with you. There's something else that you need to see as well. So even though he's our Lord, their Lord, he makes them and us his friends. How? How could this be? Well, I mean, this one line could be confusing, so I want to talk about it. It says, you are my friends if you do what I command. You might call that a conditional clause. This could sound like we save ourselves through obedience. Like, if I obey Jesus, then I will be saved. Is that what he means? Praise be to God, it is not. Not even close. Let me tell you about that. Leslie Newbegin was a pastor, theologian, a missionary in India, and he wrote a great commentary on John's gospel. He says it so well. He says it like this. They, the disciples he means, they show, and that's the operative word. The disciples show that they are indeed his beloved, his friends, by their obedience to his command, which is the command to love one another. It's not their obedience which makes them his friends. It is Jesus who takes the initiative and makes them his friends. They are the beloved because he loves them and lays down his life for them. Therefore, and I love this part, he says, therefore their obedience will be eager, intelligent obedience of those whose master is also the one who's made them his friends. At the heart of the Christian faith is the God who expresses his love, who takes the initiative by coming to us, for us, in Jesus, in a real, tangible, physical, self-sacrificial way. This God, Jesus, God the Son, Paul says in Philippians 2, this God makes himself a slave in order to make us his forever, to make us like him. And then gasp, he calls us to do the same for each other. So we take up this basic orientation to one another which Jesus has toward us, giving ourselves for the good of the other. Love one another, Jesus says, as I have loved you. So I just summarized this first point and the progression of Jesus' teaching like this. We are made friends of Jesus through his self-giving love. And to be friends of Jesus means to become friends like Jesus. But before we go on to that, friends like Jesus, let's just pause and appreciate what it means to be called a friend of Jesus for a moment. In the ancient world, a rabbi, like the master, the teacher, they would not go looking for students. Students would come to the rabbi. They would even sit at their door for days and days on end saying, I want to follow you. Would you please take me on as a student? And the rabbi would leave them there for a long time, often. Let's see if this person's really serious. Let's see if they really want to learn from me. No, Jesus says to his disciples, you did not choose me. I didn't make you sit at my door to see if you were serious about apprenticeship. You did not choose me, I chose you. The best analogy I've heard, it goes basically like this. You imagine a leading scholar from Oxford or from Harvard or one of the big fancy schools. And this leading scholar shows up one day, knocks on your door and says, I would like to supervise you, to instruct you in this area that I know you're interested in. I want you to be able to do what I do. And it's all expenses paid scholarship. Tuition, books, living expenses, are you in? No wonder they drop their nets and follow him. That's not how rabbis did things. He comes after them and invites them to apprentice. Of course, everyone has to make a choice about what to do with that invitation. Do I say yes or no? And we know that that invitation from Jesus is not simply to apprenticeship as to a rabbi, but to salvation and life. It's to say yes to his forgiveness, to say yes to life, and to say yes to allegiance and apprenticeship to him. But at the end of the day, Jesus tells us, you did not choose me, I chose you. Jesus takes the initiative. He's the one who calls us and invites us to himself, to receive his love and then to pass it on. And Jesus wants his followers to be his friends. Like he opens up his life to the disciples so they can know his heart, they can know his business, and they can be part of it alongside of him. Now, there was this time in my life where I had gone through an awkward breakup with someone. It was my second year of university. And it was weird because all of my friends and her friends were the same people. And so I just said, hey, I'm kind of going to like back away for a bit. And so I had about 2 months where I had once had a lot of friends, people I was with all the time, and then I had no friends. And it was really and truly lonely. I know, that's not totally true. I had people like the InterVarsity leader it was his job to befriend students, and so he did his job. And I knew it was his job, and I love him for it. Nahum Ip was his name. Beautiful, beautiful man. Loved me, cared for me well, did his job real good. But this was not God's intent for us to be lonely. However, for this very short period of time, I think God was doing something where I had to learn that I was a friend of Jesus in a way I'd never known before. And so I value that. I value that brief moment of something that is not God's good plan for me, that loneliness, to understand that Jesus is really and actually a friend. He's called me his friend. He's opening up his life to me, and he still says that to us. I no longer call you servants. Instead, I've called you friends. If you've put your trust in Jesus, hear that this morning. I have called you friends. You are a friend of Jesus. That's almost too much. I could just put this book down and be like, okay, we're done this morning. Just like sit with that. But there is more. And this really hits at what we're doing in our series today. To be a friend of Jesus, it's not just that I keep this to myself, this special union with Jesus through the Spirit attaching me to the Father. I don't keep it to myself. I become a friend like Jesus now. If you love me, you'll keep my commands, he said. His command is what? To love one another. It's just to do the same thing for others. Just listen to what this text shows us about what Jesus thinks true friendship is all about. First, he says the epitome of love is when one friend gives up his life for the sake of another friend, lays down his life. And Jesus is the ultimate friend in that sense. He, though God, will give up his life for you, out of love for you, to make you his friend. So to be a good friend is to say, I've got your back. I'm going to give deeply of myself for your good. And if you follow Jesus, that is the essential posture, the orientation of life that each of us are signing up for, to love each other in that kind of way. Isn't that beautiful? What's a friend? Well, I could maybe summarize like this. Friends look out for the best interest of each other, even at great cost to themselves. That's what love is according to Jesus. I am for you. That's what we see in this description in Ecclesiastes. It says this, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. I know, we usually hear this read at weddings. And of course, we would pray that 2 spouses would actually be that kind of friend for each other. But this text is not about weddings. This text is not about marriage. I mean, it includes it. It's about friendship. It's about friendship. Because life is hard, and we need people to help us up. And people need us to help them up. Even Jesus had a circle of friends that he called on for support, called on to share his life with in the hard moments. And they sometimes let him down. And that didn't stop his commitment to that friendship. Again, we are friends like Jesus when we look out for the best interest of others, even at great cost to ourselves. I think one of the most important ways we can do this to be a friend to each other is just summed up in 2 words, attention and interest. Your attention is your most valuable resource. You probably know that already. And there are many things vying for your attention. It takes time to be attentive. It takes effort, like your brain has to do stuff. It has to turn on. It uses tons of calories to pay attention to another person. And one of the key ways to love someone is just to give them your attention, to turn your face toward them, to look at them, and to love them by attending, being interested in them. how are you? How are you really? How is your work? How are things with your family or with your spouse? How is your relationship with God? And attending to that without evaluation, just listening, just being present to the other. So maybe just as like some takeaways, just like talk less, okay? If you want to be a good friend, don't talk so much. My wife would nudge me in life group studies for many years and be like, you are just talking too much, Dave. I'm like, okay, she was right. Talk less, ask good questions, listen more. Is that simple? Yes. Is it really hard? Yes. Yes, it is. But notice the second part of what Jesus says about being a friend. He says this, I no longer call you servants because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, and whatever Jesus says next is what Jesus thinks friendship is. Okay? What does he think friendship is? I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. What's at the core of friendship to Jesus? I'm letting you in on what's going in up here and in here. I'm spilling the beans to you. So we are a friend like Jesus when we open up our lives. That's the second thing we need to see. Sam Alberry, he points out, I never knew this before, and I went back and I looked and I was like, yeah, it's true, that the word for secret in Hebrew, and like the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, the word for secret, sod, is closely related to the word for friend. Why? Because a friend is someone who keeps your secrets. It's a confidant whom you can confide in to keep the confidence. An intimate friend, a soul friend, is someone who knows you, your light and your dark, all the way down. You share your heart with them. And who you can trust with those deepest parts of you. I love the way that the NRSV translates 1 Samuel 18:1, because it just kind of gives us an insight into the David and Jonathan relationship. They put it like this: when David had finished speaking to Saul, the soul in Hebrew is nephesh. It's like your inner life. It's kind of like your whole person, your breath, like you, the you-ness of you. The soul of Jonathan was bound to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. This is the intimate sharing of the inner life, your inner person. This is a picture of the closest of close friends. Now we see that Jesus values these most intimate friendships when he actually makes an inner circle for himself. He goes and he draws in three guys, Peter, James, John, the beloved disciple. Maybe that's a fourth person, I don't know. That's an interesting other thing. I'm not going to go into that. But there's these guys that he wants to have close to him. He reveals his glory to these three guys on the Mount of Transfiguration. When he is in the most agony of his life, he's about to face the cross, and not just the death part, but all of what it means to take on the sin of the world into his own body and soul. He says, come and pray with me. Who does he invite? Peter, James, and John. He's got three friends who he relies on in his most desperate moments. Why do you think you don't need them? If Jesus does. If the Son of God says, I need these people in my life, how could we think we don't need to open up our lives to others, to let them share our burden, right? We talked about that last week. To share the burden of another, that's how love works. That's what it's about. So we need friends, just like Jesus needed friends. And there are so many challenges to that in our world today. No kidding. We talked about a few of them over the last few weeks. I just want to focus in on one, and then I want to talk about some biblical wisdom about friendship. I'm going to look at the book of Proverbs a little bit as well. But the barrier I want to talk about today is this. It's the Freudian view of a human. I'm not a psychologist, but I've read enough Freud, and I've read enough about him to know that one of the greatest issues with friendship today, especially for guys, is the influence of Freudian psychology on Western culture for about a century. See, one of the most influential and devastating aspects of Freudian psychology is he basically says sex underlies everything that we do in life. It's the basis of all you do, of your impulses, of why you do what you do. And we probably don't walk around thinking about it, but it is the air we breathe. This is the psychological framework that our culture is more or less just imbued with. And it's so damaging for friendship because it sees that desire for closeness, for having a soul friend like David and Jonathan were for each other, as something akin to saying, well, if you want that, you just actually want to have a sexual relationship with this person. That's essentially what Freudianism is saying. And so we can go hunting and fishing, we can fix cars, we can watch sports, that's fine. But if we say that we want to talk about what's going on in our soul, that is, I guess as the kids today would say, that's sus. That's kind of weird. Why would you be that close to another guy, right? And I think that actually guys back away from friendship because it doesn't work within that Freudian cultural framework that we live in. So the result is that our culture says, sex and intimacy are virtually the same thing. But the fact is kids, plug your ears. No, don't. It's good. We talk about this on stage. You can have a lot of sex without any intimacy. But the Bible says you can have real intimacy without it having to be sexual at all. Okay? The prime example, again, is David and Jonathan. Jonathan was bound to the soul of David. We see how Jesus had these close relationships. We see, Paul and Barnabas and Timothy and these people that he draws in close to himself. So the Freudian view is deeply ingrained in our culture. It's the air we breathe. It's the water we swim in. But I'm so grateful that the Bible tells a different story. So my only point at this moment is just this. We can function from the better story. You can have real intimacy, real close friendships, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with sexuality. It's just about actually connecting as a human person. So the point is just this. Believe the better story. Believe what the Bible says about friends. Like at other times in history, I love this, and in other cultures. Like if you go to other, travel, and you'll see guys with their arms around each other all the time in non-Western cultures. It's normal. It's normal to be close to another guy, and it's not sus, okay? Augustine of Hippo, 4th century pastor, theologian, scholar, he says this: in this world, two things are essential: a healthy life and friendship. God created humans so they might exist and live. This is life. But if they are not to remain solitary, there must be friendship. Another of the sort of early church fathers, Gregory of Nazianzus in the 4th century, he's literally called the theologian. If you go on Google, the theologian, you'll get Gregory of Nazianzus, okay? And he writes to his buddy called Basil the Great. What an awesome name. He's actually called that too. If you write Basil the Great, you'll get this guy. Okay? Sweet name. But he says this to Basil. He says, the greatest benefit which life has brought me is your friendship. If anyone were to ask me, what is the best thing in life? I would answer, friends. Okay. So here we are. Two of the most astute theological minds in history. These are the guys who formulated our most profound statements about how to think about God as Trinity. And the best thing in life, it's not their books, it's not their knowledge, it's not their learning, it's friends. Someone to share my heart with. So now, let's just get all to practical, real for a moment. To have good friends, you have to be a good friend. And that's not as hard as it sounds. So first, Paul says the first thing about love is that love is patient. And so my encouragement is be patient. You can't Amazon Prime a deep friendship. I heard one pastor say we need friendship kindling. I like that. It's like you can't take a log and throw it on the tiniest of fire that you've built on a piece of paper. You need kindling. It takes time. You have to build into this thing if you want to see it grow over time. But that takes time. It takes time to build trust. It takes time to open your life. So you have to work toward this sort of closeness. Now, if you're married and you have small children, I understand the challenge of this. I remember. Our kids are a bit more grown now, so we can actually have friendships again outside the home. That's a lot easier. But for a time, it's just really hard. Maybe my encouragement is this. If you have a spouse and you have small children, can you find a way to say to your spouse, I value the fact that you need a friend, so I'm going to put the kids to bed tonight so you can go out with your friend. Could you just put that on your calendar, call your friend and do that? I think that's something that we can give gifts to each other, our spouses, and say, I am not enough for you. You need more friends than me. So giving each other that latitude, I think, is really important. Second thing, be trustworthy. A friend is someone who can keep a confidence, so keep a confidence. Proverbs 16:28 says, a perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. Now, hear me here. Juicy gossip is a way to hotwire a connection with someone else. It makes it feel like you're close to that person, but it will erode trust so fast. It will erode any possibility of sharing any real friendship later on. See, if you lean over and say, guess what? Don't tell anybody I told you, but whatever you're going to say next, when you do that, you are, what are the chances that the person you're talking to will ever trust you with something that's going on deep in their heart? It's goose egg. So it seems like you've built connection through that gossipy thing. What you have done is essentially said, we cannot be friends, not real friends. A gossip separates close friends. So keep a confidence. Be like a counselor. And a counselor keeps a confidence except for two things. You know what the two things are? Harm to self and harm to others. If that's the case, that's the one place where you say, we need to get more help. We need to invite someone into this. I can't leave that alone. But otherwise, it's confidence, okay? Third thing, be friendly. You have agency. You have a will that God has given you, so exercise it toward friendship. And I know that some people's personality traits make them very shy. You're an introvert. Okay, that's true. But there still is agency that you have. And so make that difficult move toward someone else. You have that responsibility. Third thing, make room for faults. I have had no good friend to whom I haven't had to say, I'm really sorry, that was a dumb thing to do or say. I have messed up in every one of my good friendships. You know why? Because I'm human, and I'm a sinner, and I need the grace of God and the grace of others, and you do as well. Jesus' closest friend, Peter, denied he even knew him 3 times. What does Jesus do with that? He forgives him. He restores him. It takes time. There's pieces there, but there is a desire to rebuild trust. So let there be grace for each other. Again, Proverbs 10:12 says, hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers over all wrong. So we're going to have to say, I'm sorry and I forgive you. That's a natural part of friendship. Point 5, okay? Be real. So you got to get past the social media mindset, which is what? Show the best, hide the rest. The highlight reel of life is not real life. There is a blooper reel. Your friends know the blooper reel because your friendship with them is not online, it's offline, right? To be friends is to be known. There's no closeness without that honesty. And at some point, you're going to have to exercise a level of trust and say, here's what's going on in my life, my real life. And you're going to have to give attention to them and say, what's going on in your real life? I want to know. So you're there for each other with all the mess that it is. Sixth thing, be open to receiving the gift of others. When you are always the giver, do you know what you are? You're the person in power. If you talk about power dynamics, to be a giver is to be a patron, a receiver is to be a client. And you maintain a client-patron relationship if you're always the one who says, oh no, I will get the bill. Oh no, I will give you this. And you never ask anything in return. One of the prime ways to deepen a friendship is to say, I need your help. Can I have this? Or open yourself up when they offer to help you. You say, actually, yeah, that would be really great. And I know, maybe it's for guys in particular, but we don't want to be seen as having any weakness, any neediness. We hate the idea of being the one in need. But can I tell you something? I am the one who is weak. I am the one who is in need. I need a person to talk to, a shoulder to cry on, someone just to spill the beans to of what's happening inside my life. I need someone who's going to listen when I'm confused, when I'm wounded, who I can talk to about things, to bounce ideas off. And they can be like, yeah, you know what, Dave? That's actually a pretty good plan. You should go for it. Or who will say to me, that sounds like a world of hurt if you keep going down that road. Bad idea. Can I offer you a better way? I need that, so do you. Here's the last thing. Be wise in choosing intimate friends. I think that wisdom would tell us that that intimate group, that 1 to 5, these are probably mostly going to be followers of Jesus who share our vision of life and who share the mission of Jesus. Like friendship at that intimate level is about sharing something so core, right? It's about sharing your soul with another. And for a Christian person, the very center of who you are is your relationship with Jesus, right? So it'd be difficult to not be able to share that most important thing about you with someone who doesn't understand Jesus or doesn't believe in Jesus. And I am not suggesting that you can't have intimates who aren't followers of Jesus or a best friend. And I know that because I've talked with some of you. For some, you are married and your spouse has walked away from their faith and you love Jesus and they don't, but they're still your best friend. I say bless you in that. Yeah, but I know as well from talking with you that there is something that's missing now. There's a piece of that just doesn't feel as close as you would love for it to be. So my word to you is just this: God bless you as you love the other as best you can. Jesus can be trusted to guide you into the right kind of closeness. And he hears your prayers for that person, that you will need the other. But you will need other intimates as well, people who do share your faith in Jesus. And here's the last thing. We are friends of Jesus. We're called to be friends like Jesus, and we are friends for Jesus. Listen again, Jesus kind of closes this out saying, I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last. C.S. Lewis said, basically you can summarize friendship like this. It's like, you too? Like you see the same thing I'm seeing? So a friend is someone you stand shoulder to shoulder with and you look at the horizon together. But a friend doesn't just share your interests and hobbies. You don't just have an interest in Jesus, you share the very life of Jesus in you. And you don't just share a common set of values, though that might be true. We share the marching orders that Jesus has given us. So it's like, yes, we share Jesus in common and we share the mission he's given us to go and bear fruit that will last. So what's the fruit? What's he sending us to do? I think it's two things. It's a life that looks like Jesus' own life. And you need friends to become like Jesus. Tim Keller said it like this: you can't know God, change deeply, or win the world apart from community. I believe that absolutely. We're not islands. You need others if you're going to know God, change deeply, or win the world. And that change deeply part is what friendship is going to be about if it's friendship in Jesus. It's going to be helping each other become like him. But that's not all. The fruit means this too. It means offering the life of God to others. See, after Jesus' death and resurrection, he makes it abundantly clear to his followers about sharing in his mission. He says this, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you. We are a sent people. We are a people on mission. And how does the Father send Jesus? To give deeply of himself for the sake of others, in order to bring life and hope and healing, to bring peace into places of chaos, to bring the good news so that there would be more and more apprentices to Jesus in his way of life. And friendship plays a role here too. See, the most significant way that you can share the hope of Jesus is through deep and meaningful friendships, through relationships. But there's a serious caution here. I call it a note on evangelifriending. It's a phrase I stole from Ricky this week. To be friends for Jesus does not mean evangelifriending. It's not like, well, I'll pursue this friendship with you in order to lead you to Jesus, and if you stop being interested in Jesus, I'm going to dump the friendship. That's not friendship. That's not love according to the Jesus way. It's a little bit like what people in high school, we had this thing that people called missionary dating. Anybody? Okay? Bad idea. Wrong on so many levels. It's not the goal. That's not what love looks like. I have real friends who do not share my faith in Jesus with me. I pray for them regularly. I seek opportunities to share what Jesus means to me with them, but I continue to be their friend just as their friend as well. C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien were friends, real friends, before Clive was a Christian. Tolkien, out of love for his friend, unabashedly sharing the gospel with his friend Lewis. There was nothing more loving he could do than that. So my love for my friends includes my desire for them to see the most important thing they ever could, how deeply loved by Jesus they are. But I still seek to bless and love my neighbors and friends regardless of how they respond to my appeals to know God. I'm going to invite the worship team to come forward. And as they do, there are a few things I'm deeply aware of. One, many of us are lonely. Like actually, if you like on a scale of 1 to 10, if you were to like check a box of like, I am deeply connected to other people and really enjoying it, and I am desperately lonely and I have no one. Some of you are going to be at different places on that scale. I recognize that. But here's my belief is that that deep ache in you for friendship is real because you were made for it. You were made for it. And it's an ache because it's maybe not your current experience right now. So part of the goal of like the programs that we run, these things like, youth or young adults, our kids ministry even, 60 plus events, life groups, men's ministry, women's ministry, part of the goal is actually just to create a context where spiritual friendships can form, where you can develop and cultivate these connections with others. So my prayer is that you, as you apprentice yourself to Jesus, that you would take steps just to open yourself up to those deeper and stronger spiritual friendships. And I want to pray for you as we stand. Jesus, you know the heart of the one who is desperate for connection and hasn't found it. And pray, God, that you would give them your grace today. That first of all, they would see that they're friends of Jesus. But that you would empower them as well to maybe open their lives up to others, to see their need for friends and to take some steps in that direction. We pray for those who are really connected and good at being friends, that they would notice the lonely and fill in the gaps. And God, we thank you that you make us your family. Jesus, that we're friends of you, we're friends like you, and we're friends for you. To empower us as your community to be really good at being good friends. Amen.